I claim Celeste as my true Luna.
The silver Luna crown glittered beneath the full moon. Vivienne Ashford stood at the center of Blackthorn Pack Square, her hands trembling beneath the long white ceremonial gown she had dreamed of wearing since childhood. Hundreds of wolves surrounded the stone platform, their cheers filling the night air. Banners bearing the Blackthorn crest fluttered above them, and a sea of glowing torches painted the celebration in gold. Tonight was supposed to be the happiest night of her life. In only a few moments, Alpha Lucien Blackthorn would place the Luna crown upon her head before the entire pack. They had trained together, fought together, and planned their future together. Every promise, every whispered dream beneath the moon had led to this moment. Vivienne searched the crowd for Lucien. When he finally appeared, dressed in black ceremonial armor trimmed with silver, the cheering grew louder. His expression was unreadable. He didn't smile. A strange knot tightened in Vivienne's chest. Something wasn't right. The pack elders formed a circle around the platform. Elder Miriam stepped forward, her weathered voice echoing through the square. Tonight, we witness the Alpha's final choice. Before the Moon Goddess and every member of Blackthorn Pack, Alpha Lucien will name the woman who shall stand beside him as Luna. The crowd erupted again. Vivienne drew a shaky breath. This was it. Lucien climbed the steps until he stood only inches away. Between them rested the ancient Luna crown, handcrafted generations ago from polished silver and moonstones. He lifted it carefully. Vivienne lowered her head, closing her eyes. She waited. 1 second. 2. 3. The crown never touched her. Instead, she heard footsteps moving away. Confused, she opened her eyes. Lucien had turned his back on her. Across the platform stood Celeste Ravenwood. She wore a crimson dress that shimmered beneath the moonlight, her lips curled into a victorious smile. Vivienne stared, unable to understand. Lucien walked toward Celeste without hesitation. The crowd fell silent. Even the wind seemed to stop. Then, before every wolf in the Blackthorn Pack, Lucien gently placed the Luna crown upon Celeste's head. Gasps rippled through the audience. Vivienne's heart seemed to stop beating. "No," she whispered. Lucien turned to face the crowd. His voice was cold. "From this night forward, Celeste Ravenwood shall stand beside me as Luna of Blackthorn Pack." Thunderous applause erupted from one side of the square. The other half remained frozen in stunned silence. Vivienne couldn't move. Her entire body felt numb. Slowly, Lucien looked directly at her. The man who had once promised never to let her cry now showed no trace of warmth in his eyes. "Vivienne Ashford," he announced for every wolf to hear, "you are no longer my chosen Luna." The words struck harder than any blade. A murmur swept through the crowd. Did he just replace her? I thought they were fated. What did she do? Maybe she betrayed him. Vivienne's breathing became shallow. She hadn't done anything. Just yesterday, Lucien had held her hand while discussing the ceremony. Just yesterday, everything had been normal. "What?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "What are you talking about?" Lucien remained expressionless. "Our relationship ends tonight." Vivienne took one trembling step toward him. "You told me this morning that everything was ready." "It was. You said we would lead the pack together." "I changed my mind." Those 4 words shattered something inside her. "I changed my mind." No explanation. No warning. No private conversation. Only humiliation before the entire pack. Vivienne looked around desperately. Some wolves refused to meet her eyes. Others whispered behind raised hands. Several openly laughed. She spotted Beta Rowan Steele near the front of the crowd. Unlike everyone else, his face was pale with disbelief. His jaw tightened as though he wanted to speak, but something held him back. Vivienne turned back to Lucien. "There has to be a reason." "There is." Hope flickered inside her. Lucien's next sentence crushed it instantly. "You are not worthy of standing beside me." The words echoed across the silent square. Vivienne staggered backward. Not worthy? After years spent helping rebuild the pack after rogue attacks. After nursing injured wolves. After risking her own life during border wars, she wasn't worthy? Celeste stepped forward, pretending sympathy. "Oh, Vivienne," she said sweetly. "Don't make this harder than it already is." Vivienne's eyes narrowed. Celeste reached out, deliberately brushing dust from the Luna crown as though admiring her own reflection. "I never wanted things to happen this way." The smug smile on her face told a different story. "You should leave with dignity." Vivienne ignored her. She looked only at Lucien. "If I truly failed you, tell me how." Lucien hesitated, just for a heartbeat. Then his face hardened again. "My decision is final." The crowd began chanting, "Luna, Celeste. Luna, Celeste. Luna, Celeste." Each chant drove another crack through Vivienne's heart. Tears blurred her vision, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of people celebrating her replacement. Elder Miriam stepped forward cautiously. "Alpha, according to our traditions, Vivienne deserves." Lucien cut her off. "The ceremony is over." The elder fell silent. Vivienne slowly removed the silver bracelet Lucien had given her on the day they had first pledged themselves to each other. She stared at it for a long moment. Then she placed it gently on the ceremonial table between them. "I waited 7 years," she said quietly.
Her voice was calm now.
Almost frighteningly calm. "I believed every promise you made." Lucien didn't respond. "I defended you when others doubted you." Still nothing. "I loved you." For the first time that night, something flickered across Lucien's face. Regret. It disappeared almost instantly. Vivienne gave a slow nod. "I understand." She turned to leave. The crowd parted, creating a path through the square. Every step felt heavier than the last. Behind her, music began playing again. The celebration continued as if she had never mattered. Halfway across the square, a deep horn suddenly echoed from beyond the eastern gates.
Once, twice,
3 times. The music stopped. Every wolf turned toward the massive entrance. The guards rushed to the walls. Dust rose along the distant road beneath the moonlight. A lone rider approached at full speed atop a towering black stallion. His cloak bore a crest no one in Blackthorn Pack had seen in decades. A crimson wolf standing before a silver crown. The symbol of the Crimson Moon Kingdom. The Blackthorn Pack's oldest enemy. The rider dismounted before anyone could stop him. Ignoring every spear pointed his way, he walked straight through the crowd. The wolf stepped aside instinctively. He never looked at Lucien. Never looked at Celeste. He stopped only when he reached Vivienne. Then, before the entire Blackthorn Pack, the armored stranger dropped to one knee. He lowered his head in absolute respect. When he spoke, his voice carried across the silent square. "My queen." Vivienne stared at him in shock. "After 18 years. We've finally found you." Silence swallowed the entire square. Not a single wolf moved. Not even the wind dared to disturb the moment. Vivienne stared at the kneeling stranger, certain she had misheard him. "My queen," she whispered. The armored man slowly lifted his head. He appeared to be in his late 40s, with streaks of silver running through his dark hair. A long scar crossed one side of his face, giving him the hardened look of a veteran who had survived countless battles. Yet despite his intimidating appearance, his eyes held only respect. He placed a gloved fist over his heart. "I am Sir Aldrich, commander of the Crimson Guard." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "The Crimson Guard? They still exist? I thought their kingdom fell years ago." Lucien's voice cut through the whispers. "Commander, you have crossed into Blackthorn territory without permission." Aldrich finally looked toward him. "I did not come for your permission." His tone was calm but unwavering. "I came for my queen." The words landed like another blow. Every eye turned to Vivienne. Celeste laughed first. The sound echoed sharply through the stunned crowd. "This is ridiculous." She folded her arms with a smug smile. "She's an orphan who grew up in our pack. Everyone knows that." Several wolves nodded. Vivienne herself had believed the same her entire life. She looked at Aldrich, confused. "I think you've mistaken me for someone else." "I have not." "You have." "I would recognize the last heir of Queen Alara anywhere." Vivienne's heartbeat quickened.
Queen.
Alara? The name stirred something deep within her memory. A voice.
Soft.
Gentle. A lullaby she hadn't remembered in years. A silver pendant. Warm hands brushing her hair. A woman whispering, "No matter what happens, never let anyone take the moonstone from you." Vivienne instinctively reached beneath her dress. Hidden against her chest was a small silver pendant she had worn since childhood. She had never known where it came from. She had simply always had it. Aldrich noticed the movement.
His eyes softened.
"You still wear it." Vivienne slowly pulled the pendant into the moonlight. The moment it became visible, Aldrich bowed his head again. Tears filled his eyes. The moon crown pendant. It belonged to Queen Alara. The square erupted into whispers. Lucien frowned. "What proof do you have?" Without hesitation, Aldrich reached into his cloak. "I expected that question." He produced an old leather scroll sealed with crimson wax. The seal had never been broken. He handed it to Elder Miriam. The elder carefully examined the ancient crest. Her face immediately changed. "This seal." She looked toward Lucien. "It cannot be forged." With trembling fingers, she broke the wax. Inside lay a handwritten letter. The handwriting was elegant, feminine. A hush settled over the crowd as Elder Miriam began reading aloud. "To whoever finds my daughter," Vivienne's breath caught. "If these words reach you, then I have failed to protect her." The elder paused, visibly shaken. "Her name is Vivienne." A murmur spread through the audience. "She is the only child of Queen Alara of the Crimson Moon Kingdom." Celeste's smile disappeared. Lucien's expression hardened. Elder Miriam continued. "Should our enemies destroy our kingdom, hide her among strangers. Let her grow where no one will search. When she reaches adulthood, the moon crown pendant will reveal her identity." Vivienne's legs felt weak. She stared at the pendant in disbelief. This couldn't be happening. Could it? The elder lowered the letter. "It bears Queen Alara's personal signature." She swallowed. "And the royal seal." The crowd exploded into chaos. "She's royalty? Impossible. How could no one know?" Lucien looked directly at Vivienne. For the first time that night, he seemed genuinely uncertain. Vivienne barely noticed. Her thoughts were racing. "My mother. I remember almost nothing." Aldrich stepped closer. "You were only 3 years old." He spoke carefully, as though afraid to overwhelm her. "The kingdom was attacked. Queen Alara knew she could not save herself. So, she chose to save you." Vivienne felt tears burning behind her eyes. "She sent me away?" "Yes." "Why didn't she come with me?" Aldrich closed his eyes. "Because someone had to remain behind." His silence answered the question. Vivienne understood. Her mother had stayed, knowing she would die. A painful lump formed in her throat. "No." Aldrich nodded slowly. "Queen Alara sacrificed herself to ensure you escaped." Vivienne's knees nearly gave way. Before she could fall, Elder Miriam caught her arm. "I'm sorry, child." Vivienne stared blankly ahead. All these years, she had believed her parents had abandoned her. Instead, they had given everything to keep her alive. Across the platform, Celeste's mind raced. This wasn't supposed to happen. Vivienne wasn't supposed to become important. She glanced nervously at Lucien. He still hadn't taken his eyes off Vivienne. That terrified her. She stepped beside him. "Lucien, we should end this." He didn't answer. Aldrich turned toward the Alpha. "There is more." Lucien folded his arms. "Speak." "Our kingdom never truly fell." The crowd fell silent again. "We lost our queen. We lost many warriors. But the Crimson Moon Kingdom survived." Another wave of whispers. "We have spent 18 years searching for Princess Vivienne." Vivienne stared at him. "You searched. Every day. Every village. Every neighboring territory. Every orphanage. We never stopped." His voice cracked slightly. "We made a promise to your mother." Vivienne felt something she hadn't experienced in years. She wasn't alone. Sir, people had been searching for her all this time. Aldrich smiled gently. "Your people have been waiting." He reached into another satchel. This time, He withdrew a carefully wrapped painting. As he unfolded it, Vivienne froze. The portrait showed a woman with long dark hair, silver eyes, and the same smile Vivienne saw every morning in the mirror.
Queen Alara.
She looked exactly like her. Vivienne covered her mouth. Tears finally escaped. My mother. Aldrich nodded. She loved you more than her own life. Even Lucien couldn't hide the surprise in his expression. He looked from the portrait to Vivienne, back to the portrait. The resemblance was undeniable. Then another realization struck him. He had just publicly humiliated a queen. Celeste sensed his hesitation. She quickly stepped forward. This changes nothing. Everyone looked at her. Royal blood doesn't make her worthy of being Luna. Vivienne slowly wiped her tears away. For the first time that evening, she looked directly at Celeste. Not with anger, not with hatred, with quiet disappointment. I never asked for a crown. She glanced toward Lucien. I only asked for honesty. Lucien opened his mouth. No words came out. Before he could speak, Aldrich addressed Vivienne once more. Your Majesty, the Royal Council awaits your decision. What decision? Whether you will return home. Vivienne looked back at Blackthorn Pack, the place where she had grown up, the place where she had fallen in love, the place where her heart had just been broken. Then she looked toward the eastern road. Beyond those mountains lay a kingdom she had never seen, a kingdom calling her home. She closed her fingers around the moonstone pendant. Her voice was barely above a whisper. If I leave, can I ever come back? Aldrich answered honestly. You may.
He paused.
But once the people crown you, your destiny will never belong to this pack again. Vivienne turned one last time toward Lucien. Their eyes met across the square. She searched his face for an explanation, an apology, anything. He remained silent. That silence became her answer. Vivienne inhaled deeply. Then she spoke the words that changed both kingdoms forever. I'll go. A collective gasp echoed through the square. As Aldrich bowed once more and escorted Vivienne toward the waiting horses, neither of them noticed a shadow slipping quietly away from the crowd. Hidden beneath a dark cloak, one of Celeste's loyal servants mounted a horse and rode into the night. His destination wasn't Blackthorn. It was the Crimson Moon Kingdom. Strapped beneath his cloak was a poisoned dagger, and a single order from Celeste. The lost princess must never reach her throne. The gates of Blackthorn Pack slowly disappeared behind Vivienne. She never looked back, not because it didn't hurt, but because if she looked even once more, she feared she would run back to the only home she had ever known, even if that home no longer wanted her. The night air was cold as Commander Aldrich rode beside her. Neither of them spoke for nearly an hour. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was filled with thoughts too heavy for words. Vivienne's fingers never left the moonstone pendant around her neck. Every few moments, she would glance at it, wondering how something so small had carried the truth of her entire life. Finally, she broke the silence. My mother. Aldrich turned toward her. Was she a good queen? A warm smile crossed the old commander's face. The finest I've ever served. Vivienne swallowed. And my father? For the first time since leaving Blackthorn, Aldrich hesitated. He died protecting the kingdom before you were born. She lowered her eyes. So, I truly have no family left. Aldrich looked ahead toward the distant mountains. You have thousands. Vivienne frowned. I don't understand. You will. By sunrise, they reached the highest ridge overlooking the Crimson Moon Kingdom. Vivienne expected ruins. She expected abandoned villages and broken castles. Instead, she froze. An enormous city stretched across the valley below. Silver towers sparkled beneath the morning sun. Massive stone walls surrounded bustling markets. Waterfalls poured from towering cliffs into crystal blue rivers. Thousands of crimson banners fluttered proudly from rooftops. It was beautiful, far more beautiful than anything she had imagined. Vivienne whispered, This kingdom survived? Aldrich smiled. We survived because we believed you would one day return. Her chest tightened. All this time, they never gave up. No, they waited. As they approached the capital, Church bells echoed across the valley. 1,
2,
3. Then every bell began ringing at once. Citizens rushed into the streets. Shopkeepers abandoned their stalls. Children pointed excitedly. Old women covered their mouths in disbelief. A young girl tugged her mother's sleeve. "Mother, is that really her?" The woman nodded through tears. "Our princess has come home." Vivienne slowed her horse. She looked around in confusion. Flowers began falling from balconies.
People bowed as she passed.
Some knelt. Others openly cried. No one shouted. No one mocked her. No one whispered behind her back. Instead, they welcomed her. An elderly man stepped forward with trembling hands. "I planted the memorial tree the day Queen Alara died." His voice shook. "I prayed I would live long enough to see her daughter." He fell to his knees. "Today the moon goddess answered." Vivienne quickly climbed off her horse. "No." She gently helped the old man stand. "Please don't kneel." He smiled kindly. "We kneel because we choose to." She had no answer. The warmth in these strangers' eyes felt overwhelming. How could people she had never met love her so deeply? The royal palace stood at the highest point of the city. Its white stone walls shimmered beneath the morning light. Massive silver wolves were carved into the entrance pillars. The gates slowly opened. Rows of royal guards saluted as Vivienne entered. Inside the grand hall stood dozens of nobles. Some smiled. Others looked uncertain. At the center stood a tall man wearing a dark navy military coat instead of a king's robe. His black hair was streaked with silver at the temples, and a long scar crossed his left hand. When he saw Vivienne, his eyes filled with emotion. He descended the throne steps immediately. Without hesitation, he knelt. "Your Majesty." Vivienne stepped back in surprise. "Please. You don't have to." "I do." His voice was steady. "I made a promise to your mother." He slowly rose. "I am King Cassian." She blinked. "The king?" He nodded. "I ruled only as your guardian." His words stunned the entire hall. Several younger nobles exchanged surprised glances. Cassian continued. "This throne was never mine. It belongs to Queen Alara's bloodline. It belongs." He looked directly into Vivienne's eyes. "To you." The hall erupted into murmurs. One noble immediately stepped forward. Lord Victor Harrow, an older aristocrat with sharp gray eyes and an arrogant posture. "This is madness." The room fell silent. He pointed directly at Vivienne. "We know nothing about this woman. She grew up among our enemies. She has no education in statecraft. She has never ruled." Several nobles nodded. Another spoke. "How do we know she isn't pretending?" A third added, "Royal blood alone cannot govern a kingdom." Vivienne felt every eye on her. For a brief moment, she felt like the rejected woman standing in Blackthorn Pack all over again. Cassian noticed. He stepped beside her. "No one is asking you to accept her blindly." He faced the council. "But none of you may insult Queen Alara's daughter in my presence." Lord Harrow folded his arms. "Then prove she's worthy." The challenge hung in the air. Vivienne slowly stepped forward before Cassian could answer. "I agree." Every noble looked surprised. She met Lord Harrow's gaze calmly. "I don't expect loyalty simply because of my birth. I'll earn it." The room fell silent. "I know nothing about ruling. I won't pretend otherwise. But I know what it means to protect people. I know sacrifice. I know betrayal. And I know what it feels like to lose everything." She looked around the hall. "If you'll teach me, I'll spend every day becoming the queen this kingdom deserves." No one spoke. Even Lord Harrow seemed caught off guard. Cassian smiled faintly. "It appears your mother was right." Vivienne looked at him. "About what?" He chuckled softly. "She once told me, my daughter won't demand respect. She'll earn it." That evening, the palace hosted a welcoming banquet. Musicians played softly. Long tables overflowed with food. Yet despite the celebration, Vivienne noticed something strange. Several nobles kept leaving the hall one by one. Quietly, almost secretly, she leaned toward Aldrich. "Where are they going?" His expression darkened. "I don't know. Across the room, Lord Harrow whispered to a servant. The servant slipped through a side door. Minutes later, a shadow climbed the outer palace wall, hidden beneath a black cloak. A crossbow rested in his hands. His target, Vivienne. She stood near the balcony, gazing at the moon. The assassin steadied his aim. One breath.
Two.
His finger tightened on the trigger. The bolt shot through the night. A sharp whistle cut through the air. Your Majesty. Cassian lunged, without thinking. He threw himself between Vivienne and the arrow.
Thud.
The poisoned bolt buried itself deep into his shoulder. Blood splattered across the white marble floor. Guests screamed. Guards drew their swords. Vivienne caught Cassian before he collapsed. Your Majesty. A guard shouted from the balcony. The assassin is escaping. The cloaked figure leaped from the palace roof onto a waiting horse. As he disappeared into the darkness, a crimson ribbon tied around his wrist came loose. One of the guards picked it up. Aldrich's face turned pale the instant he saw it. He handed it to Vivienne. Embroidered into the fabric was a black wolf surrounded by silver thorns. The unmistakable crest of the Blackthorn Pack. Vivienne stared at it in disbelief. Her heart sank. Was someone from her former home trying to kill her? Or was someone making it look that way? The palace infirmary was filled with controlled chaos. Royal healers rushed around King Cassian, carefully cutting away the fabric around the poisoned wound in his shoulder. Bowls of steaming herbs lined the tables, while silver instruments glistened beneath candlelight. Vivienne stood only a few steps away. Her hands were stained with Cassian's blood. She hadn't realized she was still trembling until elder physician Helena gently touched her arm. Your Majesty. Vivienne looked up. You should rest. I can't. The king will survive. How can you be certain? The physician smiled reassuringly. Because the bolt missed his heart. Vivienne finally released the breath she had been holding. Cassian opened his eyes slightly. His face was pale, but he managed a weak smile. I've had worse. Vivienne frowned. You were nearly killed. I've been nearly killed before. You shouldn't joke. I'm not joking. Despite the pain, he laughed softly. The throne and danger have always traveled together. Vivienne shook her head. You protected me. Cassian looked directly at her. I protected my queen. The simple answer left her speechless. No hesitation. No conditions. No public humiliation. Just loyalty. She remembered the moment Lucien had turned away from her on the ceremony platform. The memory still hurt. But now another thought entered her mind. Cassian had risked his life for someone he had known only a single day. Lucien hadn't even defended her after 7 years together. The comparison stung. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, Blackthorn Pack was no longer celebrating. The music had stopped. The flowers decorating the ceremony platform had already begun to wither. Lucien stood alone in the council chamber, staring at the empty Luna crown pedestal. Something about the room felt wrong. Too quiet. Too empty. A knock echoed through the chamber. Enter. Beta Rowan stepped inside carrying a stack of reports. Lucien didn't turn around. What is it? The Eastern Patrol has returned. And they confirmed Commander Aldrich crossed safely into Crimson Moon territory. Lucien remained silent. Rowan studied his alpha carefully. Normally, Lucien would have already moved on from any difficult decision. Instead, he hadn't slept. He hadn't eaten. He hadn't spoken to anyone except when absolutely necessary. Rowan finally asked the question everyone else was afraid to ask. Did you know? Lucien frowned. Know what? That Vivienne was the heir to an entire kingdom. Lucien slowly turned. If I had known. He stopped. Would anything have changed? The answer came far too slowly. Rowan noticed. His expression darkened. You hesitated. Lucien clenched his jaw. I rejected her because I believed she had betrayed this pack. Did you ever ask if she was innocent? Silence. Rowan sighed. I've known Vivienne since she was 16. So have you. Have you ever seen her lie?
No.
Have you ever seen her steal?
No.
Have you ever seen her betray anyone? Lucien looked away.
No.
Then why was it so easy to believe she betrayed you? The question struck harder than any sword. Lucien had no answer. Across the hall, Celeste watched through a half-open door. Every word tightened the knot in her stomach. This conversation was dangerous. Very dangerous. She had spent months carefully manipulating events. If Lucien began questioning everything, her entire plan could collapse. She forced a bright smile onto her face before entering. There you are. She wrapped an arm around Lucien. You've been working too hard. Lucien gently stepped away. I'm busy. For the first time, he hadn't welcomed her touch. Celeste's smile faltered for just an instant. Then she recovered. I only wanted to make sure you're all right. I'm fine. Rowan watched the exchange carefully. Something felt different. Lucien hadn't looked at Celeste the way he once did. Instead, his thoughts seemed somewhere else. Somewhere far beyond Blackthorn Pack. That afternoon, Rowan visited the archive hall. The room contained decades of patrol reports, council records, witness statements, and border logs. Dust covered most of the shelves. He searched for one file. The rogue attack that had supposedly proved Vivienne's betrayal. He found it. The report looked ordinary. Until he noticed something. The witness signatures. His eyes narrowed. One signature belonged to a guard who had died 3 months before the report was written. Rowan blinked. That wasn't possible. He checked another page. A second signature belonged to someone who had been stationed nearly 200 miles away on the same date. His heartbeat quickened. The documents had been forged. Someone had manufactured the evidence. He grabbed every related file. The more he read,
The worse it became.
witness statements didn't match. Patrol routes had been altered.
Dates had been changed.
Entire pages had been replaced. None of it made sense. Unless someone had wanted Vivienne removed. At sunset, Vivienne walked alone through the palace gardens. She needed air. Her mind was overwhelmed. She had discovered she was a queen. Nearly watched a king die protecting her. And now she carried the expectations of an entire kingdom. The garden stretched for acres beneath the evening sky. Moonflowers bloomed beside marble pathways. Crystal fountains reflected the stars. She stopped beside a quiet pond. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to cry. Not loud sobs. Just silent tears. I don't know if I can do this, she whispered. I don't know if I'm strong enough. A voice answered behind her. You already are. She turned. Cassian stood several feet away, his wounded shoulder wrapped in fresh bandages. You should be resting. I escaped. She couldn't help smiling. The physicians will be furious. They usually are. He joined her beside the pond. For a while, neither of them spoke. Finally, Cassian broke the silence. When I was 18, I was terrified. Vivienne looked surprised. You? I had just inherited command of what remained of our army. I thought everyone expected perfection. He looked across the water. They didn't. They expected honesty. He turned toward her. You don't have to become Queen Alara. You only have to become Queen Vivienne. His words settled deep inside her heart. For the first time, the crown didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a purpose. The following morning, training began. Swordsmanship, royal law, diplomacy, economics, military strategy. Vivienne refused special treatment. If everyone else trained before sunrise.
So, did she.
If soldiers practiced until their hands bled.
So, did she.
Within days, the palace staff began talking. She thanks every servant. She remembers everyone's name. She eats with the guards. She studies until midnight. Even Lord Harrow quietly noticed. Though he said nothing, his opinion had begun to change. Back in Blackthorn Pack, Lucien sat alone in his office long after midnight. His desk was covered with reports, yet his attention remained fixed on a single object, the silver bracelet Vivienne had left behind. He picked it up carefully. His thumb brushed the tiny engraving inside. Forever beneath the same moon. He remembered giving it to her. She had cried with happiness.
Now.
She was gone. A sharp knock interrupted his thoughts. Rowan entered without waiting. His face was grim. I found something. Lucien looked up. What is it? Rowan placed several documents across the desk. They're all connected to the accusations against Vivienne. Lucien scanned the pages. What am I looking at? They're fake. Lucien froze. What? I checked every witness. Every report. Every signature. They were forged. The room fell silent. Lucien slowly looked up. His face had lost all color. If that's true, Rowan nodded. It means Vivienne never betrayed you. Lucien's hand tightened around the bracelet. His breathing became uneven. One horrifying realization crashed over him. He hadn't lost Vivienne because of fate. He had driven her away himself. Before either man could speak again, a palace guard burst into the office. Alpha. Lucien stood immediately. What happened? The guard bowed quickly. We caught someone trying to burn the remaining investigation files. Rowan and Lucien exchanged a stunned look. Someone inside Blackthorn Pack was desperately trying to erase the truth. The guard led Lucien and Rowan through the underground archive corridor at a run. The smell of smoke lingered in the air. When they reached the records chamber, several wolves were already stamping out the last glowing embers with heavy blankets. Burned pages drifted across the stone floor like black snow. A young patrol captain saluted. Alpha. Lucien's eyes swept across the room. Where is the one responsible? He escaped through the western passage. Did anyone see his face? The captain hesitated. He wore a hood. Rowan crouched beside the scorched cabinet. Most of the files had been destroyed, but one corner of the cabinet remained untouched. He reached inside. Hidden beneath a fallen shelf was a leather journal. The flames had barely missed it. He carefully opened the cover. Inside were payment records. Dozens of them. Each payment had been made to rogue mercenaries over the past year. Lucien frowned. Who signed these? Rowan's expression hardened. There isn't a name, but there is a seal. He turned the journal toward Lucien. Pressed into the wax was the unmistakable symbol of House Ravenwood. Celeste's family crest. Lucien stared at it. No. Rowan slowly flipped another page. A folded letter slipped onto the floor. The parchment had yellowed with age, but the ink remained clear. Lucien unfolded it. His hands began to shake as he read. Mission completed. The attack on Vivienne was successful. She believes it was a rogue ambush. The alpha suspects nothing. The next phase may proceed. No signature. Only the Ravenwood seal. Lucien's breathing grew heavy. Months earlier, Vivienne had nearly died during a border patrol. He had believed it was an accident. It wasn't. Someone had planned it. Someone had wanted her dead. Rowan looked him straight in the eyes. She wasn't your enemy. She was the target. Lucien lowered the letter. His voice was barely audible. What have I done? Far away in the Crimson Moon Kingdom, Vivienne's days had become a whirlwind. Every sunrise began with sword training. Every afternoon was filled with meetings. Every evening ended with hours in the royal library. She absorbed everything she could. Trade agreements, border laws, ancient customs, military history. The more she learned, the more she realized how much responsibility rested on her shoulders. One afternoon, she entered the Hall of Ancestors. Towering portraits lined the walls. Queens, kings, warriors, every ruler who had protected the kingdom. She stopped before Queen Alara's portrait. For several moments, she simply looked at her mother's face. I wish you were here. The words escaped before she realized she had spoken them. You've already made her proud. Vivienne turned. Moon Priestess Celine stood quietly in the doorway, dressed in flowing silver robes. Her silver eyes seemed to glow beneath the candlelight. Vivienne bowed respectfully. You wish to see me? Celine smiled. I've been waiting for the right time. The right time for what? The truth. Deep beneath the palace, Celine led Vivienne into an ancient chamber carved directly into the mountain. Moonlight poured through an opening in the ceiling, illuminating a circular altar. Symbols covered every wall. Vivienne felt an unusual warmth spread through her body. What is this place? The first moon temple. Celine approached the altar. For centuries, every ruler of the Crimson Moon Kingdom has stood here. Vivienne slowly stepped forward. The moment her hand brushed the stone, The entire chamber lit up. Silver light burst across the ancient carvings. The symbols began glowing. A powerful wind swept through the room. Vivienne gasped. Her wolf stirred violently inside her. Not in fear, in recognition. Celine watched calmly. I suspected this. Vivienne looked at her. What's happening? You aren't simply Queen Alara's daughter. You carry something much older. The priestess placed both hands upon the altar. Close your eyes. Vivienne obeyed. Instantly, images flooded her mind. Ancient queens wearing silver crowns. Gigantic wolves running beneath a crimson moon. A radiant woman wrapped in moonlight placing her hand upon a child's forehead. Then, a voice.
Soft.
Ancient. Powerful. The blood has returned. Vivienne's eyes flew open. She stumbled backward. What was that? Celine's face was filled with reverence. The ancient moon bloodline. Vivienne frowned. I don't understand. Celine took a slow breath. Long before the first Alpha ruled these lands, the moon goddess blessed one family. They were chosen not because they were the strongest, but because they ruled with compassion. They became guardians of balance. Their blood has almost disappeared. She looked directly into Vivienne's eyes. Until now. Vivienne stared in disbelief. You mean, I carry that blood? Celine nodded. Your mother did. So did your grandmother. And now, you. Vivienne struggled to process everything. What does it mean? It means your wolf will continue awakening. You'll become stronger, faster. But that's not the greatest gift. What is? Celine smiled softly. When the ancient queen speaks, even rival alphas will listen. Meanwhile, King Cassian stood on the palace training grounds, watching soldiers practice. A messenger approached at full speed. He bowed. Your Majesty. What news? A rider has crossed the northern border. Cassian frowned. From where? Blackthorn Pack. Cassian's expression darkened immediately. Who is it? The rider refused to give his name. He carries only one message. What message? The messenger hesitated. He says, Alpha Lucien Blackthorn wishes to speak with Queen Vivienne. At that very moment, Lucien rode through the forest without stopping. He hadn't slept in 2 nights. Every mile felt heavier than the last. His saddlebag carried only 3 things. The forged evidence, the payment journal, and the silver bracelet Vivienne had left behind. His horse slowed as the towering walls of the Crimson Moon Kingdom appeared in the distance. Royal guards lowered their spears. Halt! Lucien raised both hands peacefully. I haven't come to fight. The captain stepped forward. State your business. Lucien swallowed. His pride had already been broken. I've come. His voice caught. To ask Queen Vivienne for forgiveness. The guards exchanged surprised glances. One disappeared inside the palace. Minutes later, Cassian himself appeared atop the massive gate. He looked down at Lucien without speaking. Lucien lifted his eyes. I only ask for 5 minutes. Cassian's expression remained unreadable. You had 7 years. The gates stayed firmly closed. Lucien lowered his head. For the first time in his life, the Alpha who had never bowed to anyone, waited outside another ruler's kingdom with nothing but regret. High above the gate, hidden behind a palace window, Vivienne watched the scene unfold. She couldn't hear the conversation, but she recognized the man waiting below. Her heart skipped once, then steadied again. She quietly whispered to herself, Why now, Lucien? Before anyone could decide whether to let him in, another rider came, racing toward the palace from the eastern road. His horse was covered in foam. He shouted before he even reached the gate. Urgent news! The rogue clans have united, and someone inside the Crimson Moon Kingdom is helping them. The warning echoed across the palace courtyard. The rogue clans have united, and someone inside the Crimson Moon Kingdom is helping them. The royal guards immediately reached for their weapons. King Cassian's expression darkened. Open the inner gate, he ordered. Bring the messenger inside. Within moments, the exhausted rider stumbled into the courtyard and dropped to one knee. My king. Our northern watchtower was attacked before dawn. Cassian stepped forward. How many casualties? 6 wounded. 2 dead. A heavy silence settled over everyone present. The messengers swallowed hard. The rogues knew our patrol routes. Cassian's jaw tightened. Only members of the Royal Council know those routes. The implication was obvious. There was a traitor inside the kingdom. From the palace balcony, Vivienne watched everything unfold. Below the walls stood Lucien. Dust covered his cloak. Dark circles surrounded his eyes. He looked nothing like the proud alpha who had replaced her only days earlier. She should have felt satisfied. She had imagined this moment 100 times during the lonely nights after her humiliation. She had imagined him suffering. She had imagined him regretting his choice. Instead, all she felt was sadness. A quiet knock interrupted her thoughts. Commander Aldrich entered. Your Majesty. She didn't turn. He's asking to see me? Yes. What do you think I should do? Aldrich answered carefully. The decision belongs to the Queen. Vivienne smiled faintly. A week ago no one asked what I thought. Today everyone does. Aldrich bowed. Because now they know your worth. In the Royal Council chamber, the advisors argued fiercely. We cannot trust him. He could be spying. It's a trap. Lord Harrow folded his arms. Or perhaps he truly seeks peace. One noble scoffed. The same alpha who publicly humiliated our queen? Cassian remained silent until every voice faded. Finally, he looked toward Vivienne. You've heard every opinion. What does your heart tell you? Every eye turned toward her. This time, no one interrupted. No one spoke over her. No one decided for her. The choice was hers alone. Vivienne inhaled slowly. Let him in. Several nobles protested immediately. Cassian simply raised one hand. Silence returned. The Queen has spoken. The massive palace gates creaked open. Lucien rode forward alone. No guards. No soldiers. No weapons drawn. Only the worn leather satchel hanging from his shoulder. He dismounted before reaching the palace steps. Royal guards surrounded him. He offered no resistance as they searched him. One guard removed his sword. Another took the dagger from his belt. A third inspected the satchel. Inside were only papers and a silver bracelet. The guard handed everything to Cassian. Cassian examined the contents before nodding. He speaks truth. Lucien climbed the marble staircase slowly. Each step felt heavier than the last. At the top, Vivienne waited. She wore a silver gown embroidered with the crest of the Crimson Moon Kingdom. A delicate crown rested upon her head. She looked stronger, calmer, more confident. Lucien barely recognized the woman before him. Not because she had changed, because he had never truly seen who she was. For several long seconds, neither of them spoke. Finally, Lucien broke the silence. You look. He stopped himself. Vivienne waited. Happy. She answered honestly. I'm healing. Those 2 words hurt more than anger ever could. Lucien lowered his eyes. I deserved that.
No.
Vivienne's voice remained calm. You deserved silence. They entered a private garden overlooking the palace lake. Cassian remained nearby, but gave them space. Commander Aldrich stood several steps behind the queen. Lucien looked around. I remember when you used to love gardens. Vivienne smiled sadly. You remember that? I remember everything. Another silence followed. Finally, Lucien reached into his satchel. I brought these. He handed her the forged reports. Vivienne accepted them cautiously. What are they? The truth. She read the first page, then the second, then the payment records. Her expression slowly changed from confusion to disbelief. Rowan had written detailed notes beside every forged document. Every lie, every altered signature, every fabricated witness. By the final page, Vivienne's hands were shaking. I never betrayed the pack. Lucien closed his eyes. No. You knew that. I know it now. She looked up. When did you discover this? Too late. Her voice remained steady. You believe strangers instead of me. Lucien nodded. Yes. You never asked for my side. No. You never trusted me. No. Every answer, was another confession. Lucien could no longer hide from the truth. I failed you. Vivienne quietly folded the papers. You didn't fail me. He looked up hopefully. You abandoned me. Hope disappeared from his face. She continued. You looked into my eyes. You saw me begging for an explanation. And you chose silence. Lucien felt every word like a blade. I know.
No.
Vivienne shook her head. You know now. You didn't know then. Lucien slowly reached into his pocket. He held out the silver bracelet. I kept it. Vivienne looked at it. The tiny engraving caught the sunlight. Forever beneath the same moon. Tears threatened to form. She remembered the day he had given it to her. The promises. The dreams. The future they had planned together. Lucien's voice trembled. I thought if I held on to it, maybe someday I'd have the courage to apologize. Vivienne gently took the bracelet. For one brief moment, their fingers touched. Both remembered the life they had almost shared. Then she carefully placed the bracelet back into Lucien's hand. I don't want it. His heart sank. It belongs to the woman who believed your promises. She looked directly into his eyes. She doesn't exist anymore. Lucien's shoulders slumped. Everything he had feared was happening. He had lost her. Not because another man had stolen her. Because of his own choices. Slowly, he stepped backward. Then, to the astonishment of every guard watching from a distance, Alpha Lucien Blackthorn dropped to one knee. His head bowed. The proud Alpha, who had never knelt before another ruler, now humbled himself before the woman he had once humiliated. I'm sorry. His voice cracked. I was proud. I was blind. I let lies become my truth. I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me. Vivienne's eyes filled with tears. Not because she wanted him back. Because this apology was the one she had desperately needed.
When it still could have changed everything.
Lucien lifted his head. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I can't erase what I did. But if there's any part of your heart that remembers who I used to be, please, give me one chance. Vivienne looked at him for a long time. Then she asked quietly, if I had never discovered I was a queen, if Aldrich had never found me, if I were still standing outside your pack with nothing, would you be here today? The question froze the air. Lucien opened his mouth. No words came. He searched for an answer. An honest one. But every answer led back to the same painful truth.
He didn't know.
Vivienne nodded sadly. That's why we can never go back. Lucien lowered his head again. He had finally understood. This wasn't about another kingdom. Or another king.
It was about trust.
And once trust had been broken, love alone wasn't enough. Just then, a palace horn blasted across the courtyard.
Once. Twice.
3 times. Commander Aldrich drew his sword instantly. A bloodied guard came sprinting toward them. Your Majesty, he struggled to catch his breath. The Eastern Armory is under attack. Cassian's expression darkened. Who attacked it? The guard looked directly at Vivienne. The attackers carried the banner of the rogue clans. He hesitated, and someone inside the palace opened the gates for them. Far beyond the palace walls, hidden in the forest, Celeste Ravenwood watched the chaos unfold from horseback. A cruel smile spread across her face. The first move, she whispered. Now, let the kingdoms destroy each other. The palace alarm bells rang without pause.
Dong, dong, dong.
Their thunderous echoes rolled across the capital, sending soldiers rushing through the streets. Market stalls closed in an instant. Parents pulled frightened children indoors. Royal guards flooded toward the Eastern Armory, with swords already drawn. Smoke curled into the sky. The first flames of war had arrived. King Cassian turned sharply. Seal every gate except the western entrance. Commander Aldrich saluted. At once, Your Majesty. Protect the civilians before anything else. Yes, sire. Within seconds, the palace courtyard transformed into an organized storm. Messengers sprinted in every direction. Archers climbed the walls. Healers prepared stretchers. Vivienne watched the organized chaos unfold. Only days ago, she would have frozen. Today, her mind became calm. She stepped beside Cassian. What do you need me to do? Cassian looked at her with quiet pride. There is a panic spreading through the city. They need to see their queen. Vivienne nodded once. I'll go. Lucien instinctively reached for the sword that was no longer at his side. He remembered it had been taken at the palace gate. Without hesitation, he faced Cassian. I can fight. Several guards immediately raised their spears. Cassian's eyes narrowed. Why should I trust you? Lucien answered without hesitation. Because if the rogue clans win, both our kingdoms lose. Cassian studied him for several seconds. Then he nodded toward a nearby guard. Return his sword. The guard hesitated. My king. That is an order. The sword was handed back. Lucien accepted it but did not draw it. Instead, he bowed his head slightly. Thank you. Cassian's voice remained firm. Do not make me regret this. I won't. Vivienne climbed the palace balcony, overlooking the capital. Below, thousands of frightened citizens filled the streets. Some were crying. Others looked toward the palace with fear. Vivienne stepped forward. A soldier announced her arrival. Our queen. The crowd slowly quieted. Vivienne took a deep breath. She had never addressed an entire kingdom before. Her heart raced. But then she remembered her mother's portrait. She remembered the promise she had made. She lifted her chin. My people. Her voice carried farther than she expected. I know you're afraid. So am I. The crowd fell completely silent. But courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to protect each other despite it. She looked across the city. This kingdom survived because our ancestors stood together. We'll do the same today. No child will stand alone. No family will be abandoned. No citizen will be forgotten. I give you my word. The silence lasted only a heartbeat. Then an elderly woman raised her fist. For Queen Vivienne. Another voice joined. For the queen. Then another. And another. Until the entire capital echoed with one united cry. For Queen Vivienne. Lucien watched from below. His chest tightened. He had never seen her like this. She wasn't pretending. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She simply inspired people. For the first time, he understood why an entire kingdom had accepted her. At the Eastern Armory, the first wave of rogue warriors crashed against the city defenses. Steel clashed against steel. Arrows darkened the sky. Explosions shook the walls. Commander Aldrich fought like a man 20 years younger. Each swing of his sword drove another attacker backward. Lucien joined the royal guards without hesitation. A rogue captain charged toward a young soldier. The boy froze. Before the blade could fall.
Clang.
Lucien intercepted the strike. The force sent sparks flying. Move! Lucien shouted. The young soldier stumbled back to safety. The rogue captain snarled. So the famous alpha fights for his enemy now. Lucien's answer came through his blade. I fight for innocent people. The battle intensified. Inside the palace, Rowan arrived with a small squad from Blackthorn Pack. He had ridden through the night after discovering another hidden cache of evidence. The moment he entered the council chamber, he slammed a wooden chest onto the table. Cassian looked up. What is this? The truth. Rowan opened the chest. Inside were dozens of letters, payment records, secret correspondence, maps, everything connected to House Ravenwood. Vivienne stepped closer. What did you find? Rowan pulled out a sealed confession from one of Celeste's former servants. I captured him before he could flee. He unfolded the parchment. The room fell silent as he began reading. By order of Lady Celeste Ravenwood. We forged reports accusing Lady Vivienne. We bribed witnesses. We arranged the rogue attacks. We planned the assassination. We intended to force Alpha Lucien into choosing Lady Celeste. Every noble in the room gasped. Vivienne closed her eyes. The betrayal was even worse than she had imagined. Rowan continued. There is more. He produced another letter. This one bore Celeste's personal seal. It was addressed to the rogue clan leader. Cassian read it aloud. Attack both kingdoms. Let them blame one another. When they are weak, we will claim both thrones. A heavy silence settled over the chamber. Vivienne whispered, "She wanted a war." Cassian nodded grimly. "Not between wolves and rogues. Between us." Far outside the city, hidden within a dense forest, Celeste watched the smoke rising above the capital. She smiled. Everything was unfolding exactly as planned. A massive rogue leader approached her. His name was Garrick. Towering, scarred, and feared across every territory. "The kingdoms still stand," he growled. "They won't for long." Celeste handed him a rolled map. "There's a hidden tunnel beneath the palace." Garrick smiled cruelly. "You've been useful." Celeste looked toward the distant city. "When Vivienne dies, I'll finally have everything." Neither of them noticed a hooded figure watching from the trees. The figure quietly slipped away. Back on the battlefield, the fighting reached the inner walls. A group of rogue warriors broke through the eastern gate. They rushed directly toward the civilians. Vivienne saw them. Without thinking, she drew her sword. Several guards shouted, "Your Majesty!" She ignored them. A frightened little girl stood frozen in the middle of the street. A rogue warrior raised his axe. Vivienne sprinted. She reached the child a heartbeat before the blow fell.
Clang.
Her sword barely blocked the attack. The impact sent pain racing through her arms. The rogue laughed. "A queen? You should have stayed in your palace."
He swung again.
Before the strike landed, Lucien appeared beside her. Together, their swords crossed at exactly the same moment. The rogue's weapon shattered under the combined force. For one brief second, Vivienne and Lucien fought exactly as they had years ago. Perfectly synchronized. No words. No hesitation. Instinct. The rogue fell. Silence hung between them. Lucien looked at her. "You all right?" Vivienne nodded. "I'm fine." Then she picked up the frightened little girl and carried her to safety. Without another word, Lucien watched her walk away. He understood. She trusted him to protect people. But not her heart. As the sun began to set, the battle finally slowed. The rogue forces retreated into the surrounding forest. Cheers erupted across the city. But Cassian didn't celebrate. He looked toward the captured prisoners. "Search every one of them." Moments later, a captain hurried back. "My king." "What is it?" "We found this." He held up a silver ring. Vivienne recognized it instantly. It belonged to Celeste. Cassian's eyes hardened. "Prepare the horses." Vivienne looked at him. "Where are we going?" Cassian drew his sword. "We're ending this." Deep within the forest, Celeste stood before Garrick's campfire. She smiled confidently. "They'll never find us." At that exact moment, a royal scout emerged from the shadows with his bow already drawn. He smiled. "Oh, I think they just did." Night settled over the forest like a heavy curtain. The retreating rogue warriors had barely reached their hidden camp when horns echoed through the trees from 3 different directions.
Boom, boom, boom.
Commander Aldrich lowered his sword. They're surrounded. Torches suddenly flared to life among the trees. Royal soldiers emerged from the east. Blackthorn warriors advanced from the west. Cassian's elite guard closed in from the north. There was nowhere left to run. Garrick looked around in disbelief. This wasn't possible. Cassian stepped into the clearing, his sword resting calmly at his side. "It was the moment your spy talked." Celeste's confident smile vanished. She turned toward one of her guards. "You told me no one followed us." The guard looked terrified. I was certain." "You are wrong." Vivienne emerged beside Cassian, wearing silver battle armor marked with the crest of the Crimson Moon Kingdom. Behind her stood Lucien and Rowan. For the first time since the betrayal, both kingdoms stood side by side. Not as enemies, as allies. Garrick roared and charged. His massive axe crashed toward Cassian.
Clang.
Cassian blocked the strike. The force shook the ground beneath their feet. Around them, soldiers clashed as the final battle erupted. Lucien fought through wave after wave of rogue warriors. He no longer fought for pride or reputation. He fought because innocent lives depended on it. Nearby, Rowan cornered several fleeing mercenaries. "Drop your weapons." One man tried to escape. Rowan tackled him to the ground. Among the prisoner's belongings was another leather pouch.
Inside.
More letters. More payment records. Enough evidence to expose every surviving member of Celeste's conspiracy. It's over, Rowan whispered. At the center of the battlefield, Celeste slowly backed away. Her breathing became uneven. This wasn't supposed to happen. She looked toward Lucien. You loved me. Lucien's expression never changed. I never knew you. She laughed bitterly. You'll regret choosing her. I already regret the choice I made. Those words struck harder than any weapon. Celeste's face twisted with rage. If I can't have either kingdom, no one will. She pulled a hidden dagger from beneath her cloak and lunged toward Vivienne. Everything happened in seconds. Cassian moved first. Lucien moved at the same time. Before either man reached her, Vivienne stepped forward herself. She didn't retreat.
She didn't hesitate.
She turned her body and caught Celeste's wrist with one hand. The dagger stopped inches from her heart. Celeste gasped. Vivienne twisted sharply. The dagger fell harmlessly into the leaves. With one smooth motion, Vivienne disarmed her completely. Then she pointed her sword at Celeste's throat. Silence spread across the battlefield. Every soldier watched. Celeste fell to her knees. You've won. Vivienne looked down at the woman who had stolen years of her life, who had destroyed her relationship, who had nearly started a war, who had tried to murder her more than once. Anger rose inside her, but something stronger rose with it.
Peace.
She lowered her sword. I'm not becoming you. She looked toward the guards. Take her. Royal soldiers immediately surrounded Celeste in silver chains. As they led her away, Celeste screamed. You should have killed me. Vivienne answered quietly.
No.
You'll live with the truth instead. Dawn broke over the battlefield. The fighting had ended. The rogue clan surrendered. Garrick was captured. The surviving conspirators confessed. Peace had finally returned. Yet one question remained unanswered. Vivienne stood alone in the ancient moon temple, the same chamber where she had learned about her bloodline. Moonlight poured through the opening above. The air suddenly became warm. Silver light filled the room. The symbols carved into the walls began glowing. A familiar voice echoed softly. Child of the ancient moon. Vivienne slowly looked upward. A radiant woman formed from moonlight itself. The moon goddess. She smiled kindly. You have been tested. Vivienne bowed her head. I don't know if I passed. You did. The goddess stepped closer. Power without compassion creates tyrants. Compassion without courage creates victims. You chose both. Vivienne remained silent. The moon goddess raised one hand. Two glowing silver threads appeared in the air. One thread stretched toward Lucien. The other, toward Cassian. Vivienne stared in confusion. What are they? The bonds of fate. The goddess looked toward Lucien. He was your destined mate. Lucien lowered his head. I know. The moon goddess continued. But a mate bond is a gift, not a prison. When trust is willingly broken, the bond itself breaks. The silver thread connecting Lucien and Vivienne slowly dissolved into countless particles of light. Lucien closed his eyes. He felt it. For the first time, the bond was truly gone. No hope remained. No second chance. Only acceptance. Then another silver thread slowly brightened. It connected Vivienne to Cassian. The goddess smiled. Love built upon respect, trust, and sacrifice can become a destiny of its own. Cassian looked at Vivienne. I never expected anything. Vivienne smiled through tears. I know. That was exactly why she trusted him. Several weeks later, the capital gathered once more beneath the full moon. This time, no one came to witness a rejection. They came to witness a beginning. Thousands filled the palace square. Silver banners danced in the wind. Children laughed. Musicians played. Commander Aldrich stood proudly beside Rowan. Even Lord Harrow smiled openly. At the top of the marble staircase, Vivienne stood beside Cassian. The royal priestess lifted the ancient moon crown. Unlike the last ceremony, Vivienne wasn't afraid. She wasn't waiting for someone else's decision. She had already chosen her own future. The crown rested gently upon her head. The crowd erupted. Long live Queen Vivienne! Long live Queen Vivienne! Cassian turned toward her. My queen. Vivienne smiled. My king. They joined hands. Not because fate demanded it, because they both wanted it. Months passed. The kingdom flourished. Trade returned. The borders reopened. The alliance between Blackthorn Pack and the Crimson Moon Kingdom ended generations of hostility. Lucien kept his promise. He rebuilt his own pack with honesty instead of fear. He promoted Rowan to head Beta. He established new laws requiring every accused wolf to receive a fair hearing before judgment. No one would ever suffer what Vivienne had endured again. One quiet afternoon, Lucien stood alone beneath the same tree where he had once promised Vivienne forever. He held the silver bracelet one final time. Then he placed it beneath the tree. He smiled sadly. Thank you for teaching me what a true Luna really is. He walked away without looking back. Far away, in the royal gardens of the Crimson Moon Kingdom, Vivienne walked hand in hand with Cassian beneath blooming moonflowers. Children ran through the palace grounds laughing. Hope filled every corner of the kingdom. Vivienne looked toward the night sky. The same moon that had watched her heartbreak now watched her peace. She finally understood something her mother had tried to teach her long ago. A crown could be taken. A title could be stolen. Even love could be broken. But a woman who discovers her own worth can never be replaced again. If you enjoyed this Alpha and Luna story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with fellow werewolf romance fans. Leave a comment telling us, if you were Vivienne, would you have forgiven Lucien or chosen Cassian? Your answer might inspire our next unforgettable story. Until next time, keep believing that your greatest chapter may begin after your greatest heartbreak.